sorry.
You're not calling it to order either.
No, no, I'm just going to welcome everybody and we'll get started. I'm just thinking, for each site, should I just have John talk about his part?
No, I think you should probably do it. Just do the introduction.
Let me find the properties on here because I got the information. No, just so, I mean, what am I going to say? That it's just,
They call booklet,
yeah, oh, yeah, that's true. It's
come to
long.
this meeting, and you're gonna say, here,
That's perfect.
Should have sold things.
this increase.
We knew we were getting this crowd, yeah.
Which were born in May of 2009. Total number of properties. Zoning is R40. The quarry, what, donated, 2006, 60 acres. That's it. Otherwise, you don't have to say anything.
No. We have everybody?
You don't even have to say.
Oh, is he coming? Michael Klasky. We can go ahead. We can get started.
These rebel articles,
I don't even know there is.
We can go
I
ahead.
don't even know.
Wait, do we have, oh, Jack is there.
let me look them up. I didn't get it.
I just got it before I left.
Oh my God. I mean, so many kids ain't going to school now. We'll just leave. I think we started anyway. Yes.
Okay, I think we'll get started now. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the first public meeting of the Town of Ramapo Asset Review Committee, which for simplicity we're calling TARC. Just a little bit of background. We had this committee, I asked to form this committee back in the fall because as I think commonly known, the Town of Ramapo owns a number of parcels of property which are used or not used in many different ways. And we decided we should really inventory and study all of these parcels, decide if they're being used appropriately, if the town is getting a benefit from them, if there should be some other use or some change in the status quo on those properties. By law, there's no requirement that we have a committee or a meeting such as this, but we thought it would be the most appropriate way to study this, to open it up, to have some public participation, public input. What the committee did after studying the parcels determined that 5 particular parcels should be looked at further, bear the benefit of a further review, and should be the subject of the meeting tonight. These parcels consist of the Hamlet's property, which is located in the Tornbrook area of the town of Ramapo, near Route 17. The Quarry property, which is the former Tilcon property in Suffern, the village of Suffern. The Ramapo Cultural Arts Center, which is on Main Street in Spring Valley. 40 Pine Brook Road in the village of Chestnut Ridge, and what's called the Burgess Meredith property on 96 Camp Hill Road by Village Hall in Pomona. These are properties that 4 of them are currently not being used in any active way. The 5th floor of the Cultural Arts Center is in use, but we believe that there could be greater use for the site. So we thought it would be worth looking at. The committee also made a recommendation that a number of other properties that are actively being used for recreational purposes not to keep the status quo. The town pools, rustic tennis courts, the equestrian center, the senior center, et cetera. So what I'd like to do, I'll run through each of these properties briefly and then open it up to the public. Everyone can speak about any or all of these properties. I would just ask that we focus the comments tonight on these properties. I'll ask everybody to keep their comments to 4 minutes. We'll start with the Hamlets. This consists of 3 parcels for a total of 105 acres. It's in the unincorporated town of Ramapo. The zoning for that is R40, which is a single-family zone. The town acquired that property by purchase on May 27th of 2009. We paid $5,022,506, and as of last month, we owed about $2.5 million on that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Lynch, thank you. I'm sorry, I should introduce everyone up here before we start. Going from my right to left, we have John Lynch, who's our finance director, Janice Gilman, who is the deputy town attorney, Mona Montel, who is chief of staff as well as purchasing officer, myself as supervisor, Brendel Charles, who is deputy supervisor, Michelle Antosca, director of Parks and Recreation, and Tom Sullivan. Tom, your official title is? Facilities manager. Thank you. So we comprise the Asset Review Committee, and we're just here to, everyone's here in case everyone bears a special expertise or field, and that's what everybody brought to this table. So the hamlet's, again, 105 acres. We bought the property. We owe about $2.5 million on it, and that was by bond, Mr.
Yes,
Lynch?
by bond.
Very good. We have an opinion from our bond counsel that there is no legal impediment to disposing of the property in terms of the bond. Would that be correct?
That is correct.
Right now, this is a property that has several tenants on it. There had been about a dozen families living there that the town acquired as tenants when we bought the property 10 years ago, 9.5 years ago. Over time, and in the last year and a half, most of the tenants have voluntarily moved out. We reached arrangements where we found alternate housing, and we assisted them in moving out. There are 3 people left, all of whom are in the process of actively looking to relocate, and we expect that within a few months, the property will be vacated. The reason to have people move out was primarily, we decided it wasn't appropriate for the town to be in the landlord business, to be renting out these properties. There were a number of issues, including emergency vehicle access to the site. Whether the site could be used for something else, we don't know what would be appropriate there. We've had some very preliminary discussions with the Rockland Housing Action Coalition, which is a not-for-profit group located in New City, that they were interested in possibly doing some form of affordable housing on the site. They have a good track record in doing affordable housing that's open to the entire community, but there's no proposals, there's nothing planned. And I'll say that about each of these sites that are on for tonight. We have no specific plans or proposals for each site. Some sites have had some interest in people that would like to do things with them from the outside, but there's no contracts, there's no agreements, there's no agenda for each particular site. The next site is the quarry. The quarry is located at 15 Tilcon Road. It's in the village of Suffern. It's controlled by the Suffern zoning laws. Consists of 60 acres. The zoning permits light industrial and storage on the site. We bought the property we acquired the property December of 2006. It was donated to us by the former owners, Tilcon. We have no debt, we have no money owed on the property. It's a beautiful site, but it's also a site that has been attracting trespassers who in the summer go and swim in the quarry there, and the police have to respond. So there's a bit of a danger. It's a site that is currently not being used in any legitimate way by the town or by anybody in the town. There's been some interest by a number of individuals in terms of purchasing it. I did meet with the mayor of Suffern in the beginning of last year, and we did commit that if we sold the property, it would be subject to Suffern zoning law, and that there would be no contingency to allow something to be built there other than what's permitted under Suffern zoning law. $1, yes. We have an appraisal on that property. As of 2017, the quarry was appraised at $3,010,000. The next site is the Ramapo Cultural Arts Center. This is a former movie theater on Main Street, North Main Street in the village of Spring Valley. It's one parcel of about a 0.18 of an acre. We bought it in May of 2005. We paid $637,500 for it, and I believe $1 million in renovation costs.
Renovation subsequent to purchase.
And that was bonded. We currently owe about $57,000 on the bond for the purchase and $90,000 on the renovation. This is a site that has been used. Nonprofits have been meeting there. We recently had the town sponsored a toy, food, and clothing donation giveaway to needy families at Christmas time. So it's a site that's actively in use, but we think it could be used more I don't want to say the word aggressively, but more thoroughly. So we wanted to put it on just to hear comments and suggestions on what can be done with it. I don't know if there's any real interest or benefit to looking to sell it, but it's something that could be, other uses could be looked at. We've have different churches have had worship services there. We have the fire department has met there. We've had the health department has had meetings there. We've hosted meetings by the Mexico, Guatemalan, and Ecuador consulates at the site. I'm sorry?
Chico Wally Dance Club.
That's right, the dance club, the Youth Film Festival, the East Ramapo Marching Band. So there is active use on the site. And there's a number of other organizations that do use it. The next site is 40 Pine Brook Road. That's an 8.33 acre parcel in the village of Chestnut Ridge. I don't have the actual zoning classification, but I believe it allows for single-family housing. And it's again subject to the zoning laws of jurisdiction of Chestnut Ridge. We acquired that on October 25th of 2005. We paid $1,657,488 for it. We owe $799,000 on the bond for that site. And we have an appraisal from 2017 that values the property at $1,620,000. And finally, we have the site located at 96 Camp Hill Road in Pomona, which is commonly called the Burgess Meredith site. This was a site that was owned by the famous actor Burgess Meredith, and the town bought it on February 24th of 2010. It consists of 7.33 acres. It's zoned R40, which is single-family zoning. And again, single-family zoning in the town of Ramapo allows single-family houses, and schools are permitted in every residential district. We paid $2.5 million for the property. We owe about $1,093,000, and we have an appraisal as well. The appraisal is unfortunately less than we paid for it, $1,830,000. So those are the 5 properties we'd like to discuss tonight. At this point, I think I'll just open it up to the floor, and whoever would like to speak will go show of hands. Yes, sir.
Okay, I spoke last week, but
I'm sorry.
I wasn't sure you had a microphone. Was it?
No, I think people could hear. If we have trouble, we'll just ask you to speak up. There was,
that,
No.
I think,
my name is Ken Linsner. I'm president of Rockland Center for the Arts. And we took a look, I personally looked at all of the properties that are on this list that are historic properties for this town about 4 years ago. You should know that. I examined the houses and examined the condition of the property. But here I'm speaking for ROCA. ROCA, as you know, is the cultural arts venue for this county. And we have an aggressive new music and literature program and dance program. We would like to expand that into the western aspect of the county, meaning town of Ramapo. So this evening, I initially thought we'd be looking at Burgess Meredith property, but now I'm looking at the Cultural Arts Center. And I think, Daley, did you want to speak to that? You don't? Okay, well, we'll be writing you a proposal, but I have a packet for you describing what we would do with the property essentially, and how we would manage it. ROCA receives only about $37,000 of our almost $1 million budget from the county. The rest we raise through our school and other programs, our outreach programs, Ramapo, and state grants. Can we turn this property into an income-generating engine? The answer is yes. Can we do it overnight? No, but we can do it. And we proved that with ROCA, we proved it with our outreach programs. So we do have an interest in the property, and I think that we could turn it into an asset for the town as a partner, and at the same time, generate income and interest and revitalization in that area.
very good. I look forward to reading your proposal. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have this meeting, to hear from the public and hear ideas like that that are worth pursuing. Just by way of further process here, no decisions are going to be made tonight on any properties. The committee will hear what everybody says. There'll be a report to the town board. Ultimately, the town board will make decisions or not make decisions and leave the status quo on any particular parcel. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Susan Fulgaris, and I'm the president of Stony Point Historical Society. And I'm very happy to see that Ramapo is taking a proactive approach on these parcels and bringing them to the attention of the entire community. I do, of that document these very valuable resources. I'm known for coming out front on cemeteries. We have the Conklin Cemetery on the Minnesiongo Creek. I spent 18 months foiling documents and never received the SECRA for the original Minnesiongo bill. So if we're going to save our history, because we can't go forward unless we understand where we came from, we need a repository of documents where people have worked very hard, your engineers, you have historians that document these facilities, and they're legitimate records that go to the State Historic Preservation Officer. And they are not available through the town of Ramapo. And I have foil after foil after foil where you have told me we don't have them. So how do we prove what we know we have? I have snippets, I have paper this high. How is the town of Ramapo going to make the historical documentation that has already been done by archaeologists, by historians, by the State Historic Preservation Office available to the general public?
So the town last year went into a bid to scan all of our town documents in our building planning and zoning department. We're moving on to other document management system where we hope to be able to have a portal, because it's not easy for us to even respond to all of the foils that are out there. So we're hoping that that any document that's allowed to be foiled, Janice Gittleman is our FOIL officer from the attorney's office. She reviews FOILs. We certainly want to be as responsive as we can, and we're hoping to have a portal up. It's not going to happen overnight. Just like you said, the generation of the income isn't going to happen overnight. We're hoping to have a public portal of whatever documents are allowed to be out there. The state archive information, if the state has it, I can't imagine, do they not?
The state sends you back to the town.
Oh.
It's down across
So-
the board, they tell you legitimately, the towns legally should have this documentation.
Okay, this is the first I'm hearing of the specific issue. What I'm going to ask you to do tomorrow, if you could email me,
Happily.
thank you, and then we'll follow up.
The documents, because it's so important that right now, the development is there. The town is a repository for those documents, and they're legal documents. So it's very important that historians and that historical societies have access to those. Thank you.
Thank you, understood. Let me just add, we have a town historian, Craig Long. He was not able to be here tonight. He had another commitment in the Village of Montebello for a historic preservation matter, but he will be weighing in as well on any properties that have historic value. Yes.
Has the village
We have your name.
suffered?
We have your name.
Oh, Veronica DeMayo Bosch. I'm the former mayor of Fairmont
Thank you.
and presently serve as the first vice president of the village.
Let me tell
I'm
everybody.
going to ask if you could use the microphone. People are having trouble in the back.
They asked me who I was. I'm the former mayor of Vermont, Veronica DeMayo Bosch, and I presently serve as the first vice president of the Historical Society of Rockland. We are very, very interested in preserving the history of Rockland County. We are interested in the Mary Mowbray Clark property, in the Henry Varnum Poor property. We're interested in all of the historical properties in the county. And at this time, after the town of Ramapo purchased them, they're falling apart, just as the Burgess Meredith estate is falling apart. And we're concerned about that because we do not want to see these historic properties disappear. We don't want to see the buildings disappear. We don't want to see the properties sold off and developed. Another thing is I was just going to ask a question. Is there anybody here representing the village of Suffern? Okay, my question to the board is, have you considered just returning the land to the village of Suffern, charge them $1 for it, whatever, but allow them to own the property? Is that possible?
Everything is possible. It's not something we've considered. I'd like to explore all options at this point. Regarding the other properties you mentioned, they're not on the agenda tonight because really there's no, I think there's no interest in doing anything other than keeping those properties, and perhaps we could have a separate meeting to discuss how to use them better, how to move forward with them. but we wanted to focus on these properties. But thank you for your comments. Yes, Judge?
President of the Historical Society of Rockland County, we would advise that these properties, the historic properties, that the historic properties would be on the agenda tonight, and that's why I'm here tonight. I know some of the other members of the Historical Society came also for that reason, and we'd like to respectfully request that an additional meeting be held just to discuss those properties, because that is certainly the focus of my interest, and I know the interest of many of the others here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So if I may for a moment, I'd like to mention that, to give a shout out to the Friends of Harmony Hall, because they were just at our last meeting where they offered to help the town continue to fix up, take responsibility for, license from us a historical piece of property so that the town would not be put in the position of not being able to maintain, upgrade, update. So we're looking for partners in reference to any of these projects, similar to Roca, who has now mentioned for the first time an opportunity to work with us in the Cultural Arts Center. So we welcome any discussion in reference to partnership in terms of all of those, and we appreciate that the judge would like us to ensure that historic properties are maintained, and the town's comeback is we certainly would like to do that, and we certainly look to these organized groups to help with doing that. And we will have a further public meeting specifically in reference to historic properties. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Yeah, no, we don't want the podium.
Rather
We want
just
it
do
more
it from the
informal,
floor.
but
I'd
thank
like
you
to
for
introduce the
the.
discussion. Let me just follow up. We will have a public meeting on those properties, but in addition, I'd encourage, we could have, if anybody from an organization that's interested in doing something with those properties, call me anytime. We could always set up a meeting first and get ideas and discuss different options. Very good. Who would like to speak next? Yes, Mr. Levine.
So I'm Bruce Levine. Thank you, Michelle. So first thing is, I want to make it clear that I am opposed to even one property of these or any of the others that the town owns from being just sold for financial reasons. There is no reason for the town to do it if the town has a deficit. The state can provide the ability to create a deficit bond, as they did for Rockland County and for the Village of Suffern. I did some math today, having just paid my property taxes, and I can tell you it's an infinitesimal amount of property tax that might be involved to pay off such a bond, assuming the number was what we were told previously, which is about $8.5 million. We've never gotten a real number on that. We don't know exactly what happened and what your financial condition is. But financial reasons to sell are completely bogus and should not be entertained. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Levine.
Specifically, I do want to address, I like the fact that you're thinking affordable housing on some of these. That's really needed. Just make sure the bedroom mix is mixed. 1s, 2s, 3s especially are needed in this town. This town is subject to de facto segregation, which frankly, if at some point the U.S. Department of Justice might be interested in this town. Second, more important, and more specifically about one of these properties, I was principally involved in the preservation of what is your Cultural Arts Center. It was tax delinquent. I saw it. I was village attorney. Brendel was in the village at the time. We wanted to save it. Our idea of it was that it would be used as an active community center for children and young people. Our idea was that we would jointly manage it. That is, the village of Spring Valley and the town of Ramapo would jointly manage that property. We would buy it jointly, and we would manage it jointly. That was the original plan. Mr. St. Lawrence decided he was just going to buy it and then sit on it. And that obviously did not work, all right? And that property has been vastly underused. and in just myriads of ways. So if there's any group that is being formed to look at how that is going to work with the Center for the Arts, which is a great organization, to take lead on that, I'd certainly be willing to be involved in it because there's a tremendous need for indoor recreational space in the village of Spring Valley for the kids of Spring Valley. Just lastly, I wanted to point out that there are numerous grants available for historic properties and probably for some of these other properties. Very specifically, not only are there historical property grants, but there is also still a form of state legislative member money. And I know I've been speaking to Harmony Hall about that. Because it's owned by the town, anything owned by the town is potentially eligible for those member items. And if you see specific projects in any of these buildings that you want to repair or improve, or any of the other buildings, the historic buildings or otherwise, there is more than one way to obtain funds for those properties. I guess I'll leave it at that for the moment. I hope you have more meetings on this, but do not sell an ounce of land.
Thank you, Mr. Levine.
I'm sorry. Can I have the mic for a second? Although this is not an answer and question session, it's just for information, I'm going to address what you said, and I thank you for giving us some history about the Cultural Arts Center, which is very dear to me. I totally agree. It should not be sold. 6 years ago, between when that acquisition happened and when I came onto the town board, that movie theater was a place where people could exercise a different type of movie, specifically sexual movies, okay? If that's your thing, I don't have a problem, but it wasn't appropriate for where it was because we wanted to use it, as you said, for the young people. Now it does have movies for the Indian community who was kicked out of their home off of Kennedy Drive by the high school. We have live performances there, offices and organizations come there, and the community center is used by many not-for-profits, which is the humanitarian part of what we do here at the town of Ramapo. And Michelle Antosca has been a great catalyst helping me to continue that. And so, as Supervisor Specht read all the different things, that's just some of the things that have been done at that center. And we want to continue to use it because one of the things that is important, and you and I know, Bruce, because we worked on many projects together, is not-for-profits don't have a lot of money, especially those like ROCA and different organizations, the Historical Society. Many of you take money out of your pocket. So when they come to us and they ask us, can we have a program for children like Chikawali, as Michelle mentioned, we give it to them for free because they can't afford it. But the profit here is giving the culture to the children. So I totally agree with you, but I wanted you to know that since that time, we have done that. And we haven't made any money. And the utility bill still has to get paid and the water still has to get paid. But we've had the opportunity to use it for different organizations, especially the East Ramapo children, so that they would have a place to go. And if it's up to me, after we continue to do all of our research, it will continue to be that way. Thank you so much.
Who would like to, yes, Ms. Muniz.
Thank you, Michelle. Hi, I'm Deborah Munitz. I think a lot of people here know that I'm a big fact gatherer. I don't like to come and actually give any opinions until I've kind of gotten our facts straight. And so I want to make a comment that I came expecting to get more details. And I really appreciate sort of that initial rattling off of information, but I was actually kind of looking for a little bit more. So one of the things that maybe before other people talk, if other people think it's appropriate, I was kind of looking to understand how the committee identified, like what was your reasoning for choosing these properties? amidst so many other properties. I think that would give us a sense of, perhaps with the quarry, obviously, you don't owe any money, and that's just a money opportunity. But it has a history, and I think it's really would be helpful, and what I'm looking for is to get a better understanding of, what's on the record for you guys. What are you seeing? There's only 5 properties. There is a resolution that the board passed with respect to whatever the purpose was for obtaining each of these properties. That's information that the public hasn't had, like, what are all these resolution numbers? So I think starting with understanding, what the initial stated purpose would be of interest, or any other comments. I know, like with the quarry, that, my understanding, was given to us, for, use as flood control. I know Suez had investigated it and ruled it out as a source of water supply, but that was when they were trying to do the desal plant. I don't know if they've ever gone back and seriously looked at it since that was turned down. I know I came and St. Lawrence had a very extensive, he looked into a lot of stuff with, I think it was Booker Engineering at the time, did a very extensive preservation and presentation, and there was monies being discussed from state and federal agencies to use that for flood control, which is a very important public purpose. I had read an article somewhere that there was already a contract with the Goldstein family, and that was back in 2008, and I think it was actually updated in 2012. So, is that active? Is that even part of something that the town has to deal with? Would this go out completely to public bid? I think we're looking for more information. I saw an article on the Chestnut Ridge property that stated specifically, it was in the Journal News, that there was a special meeting to get 40 Pine Brook, and that it was purchased specifically for open space preservation, and there were quotes from the village mayor and the village trustees thanking the town of Ramapo for taking that step with respect to preservation. I did see something with respect to Burgess Meredith, that the intent was to buy it and do some very, very limited and respectful cluster development to be able to raise the money to preserve the site. And since that time, my understanding is nothing has been investigated, and that, so there is no plan to actually save it, which was the original intent. I can tell you with respect to the Cultural Arts Center, I like everything that Brendel said. My biggest concern personally is that I know I've called in the past wanting to rent it and couldn't get a return phone call. So I still think that there is an opportunity to get better use and to, get responsiveness. And if Roca's willing to take that over and run it, that could be a great solution. And as with respect to, let me just, one more, the hamlets, obviously I think a lot of people like me are probably very curious, because that was one of the properties that was the subject of, the whole litigation SEC situation, and it is well known for being developmentally problematic because of the rattlesnakes. And obviously we have some very interesting tourist-friendly development going on in that neck of the woods, and I would be very concerned to have it change. I don't know if anybody's gone to the vineyard that's up there, but it's a wonderful place to go. This is very nearby, and I think that we should be encouraging,
your time is up, but
looking at ways in which to get back to, Suffern was a destination for summer vacationers, and I think that we need to be thinking along those rounds. So I'd like to know what your thoughts are. Read the resolutions, give us some insight as to why you're considering these properties. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, right over here.
My name is Patsy Wooters, and I live in Suffern, and this is just hearsay, but I understand the quarry site was offered to the village of Suffern at the turn of the 20th century, and the Suffern declined, and it was mined for maybe 100 years, and it was offered again to the village of Suffern, and again the village of Suffern declined, and Christopher St. Lawrence accepted it. So that's the history as far as I know. I want to speak about Torn Valley. As you know, it's close to my heart. I think that the proposal to have low-income housing in that area is an abysmal idea, and any planner could tell you the same. Anyone who's low income needs to have an economic way of getting to shopping and work, and there is no transportation there apart from buses on Route 59, 17, and you'd take your life in your hands to cross that road. And there's also no employment, and low-income people need employment. So I think to segregate low-income people in an isolated corner like that would be an abysmal idea. I realize that the Torn Valley parcels that we're talking about today were purchased with the intention of economic development, so there's no bond barrier. However, this is mountain forest land, it's rattlesnake territory, and I would humbly suggest that you reach out to the Trust for Public Land and the Open Space Institute in the state of New York parks to see if they could add it into Harriman State Park, which is really what truly is most appropriate for that land. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, in the back.
My name is Keith Albert. I'm the Executive Director for Habitat for Humanity of Rockland County. Our territory since the early 90s has been all of Rockland County, and we've built a number of houses, including 3 in Hillburn, and we're working on a proposal now for Hillburn. Low-income housing in Rockland County, we won't accept families unless they're making at least $50,000 a year. And that's because of the taxes and the other expenses in the upkeep of a house. We have a number of families at that level and above. I have over 15 in the waiting line right now who can't afford to buy a house in Rockland County. And what we do is we build those houses and sell it to them at cost at 0% for 30 years. And they are good, strong families, they are hardworking. But the problem is in getting land. Now, in the development that you're doing in Ramapo, what we'd like to see is that a certain section of each plot that you develop into housing be set aside for low income, just for the diversity and I think for the betterment of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Maybe some of you will remember me. I'm Barbara Pollitt, and I was the person who proposed to develop the Burgess Meredith Estate as the Heritage Herb Farm, which we did in 2012, which you may or may not be aware of. I mean, some of the ladies here were part of those early meetings and helped us to get started. We worked with an idea to create a education center, a kind of a place for the Washington Rochambeau Revolutionary Road project to have a base, a natural forest and environmental center, and possibly a historic demonstration farm. The way that property is laid out has a beautiful big field with a house at the top. The house is in a terrible state of disrepair. When we wanted to water, Tom will remember, I was dragging hose 1,000 feet from the neighbor's house to water. And I said, we've got to get in the house and get the spigots turned on. And we went in and found that all of the copper had been vandalized because when the town took over the property after the Beth Schraga proposal was, which you may or may not remember, had been defeated when they asked for a special permit to put a school, that because Rockland County had come out against the Beth Schraga proposal, a supermajority vote was needed to override to gain the special permit, and that wasn't accomplished. So that proposal for the school thankfully was defeated. And that was at that time that I came forward to the town with this idea to model this after a very beautiful farm concept in Connecticut of an herb farm with these very classically designed things and an education program and a historical setting for maybe the poor pottery to be displayed, for small office space for not-for-profit use, or a cafe, a tea house. All these wonderful ideas, a venue for weddings, concerts. This property lends itself to become a venue for performances and for town use. Now, there was talk of trying to fit some veteran housing in, but that was also very ill conceived. And the more I spent time on the property and looked at it and saw that there's a great lower area with a tennis court that could be covered over with, you know, like a picnic ground or a camp setting, it just seems like there could be a barn built over the old pool that could become, you know, a site for making, you know, wreaths and herbal, you know, storefront or workshop for any other kind of historical activities. We used to have the Historical Society of Rockland County, for whom I worked for many years doing exhibitions. I was a curator there. And we had the Folklife Festival, which was always a lot of fun with encampments of the Civil War people and the blacksmiths and the various folks. And to me, this Burgess Meredith Estate is just a dream waiting to happen. And I would be happy to become involved again. I stepped away from the project because, unfortunately, I had no authority. And there was some unfortunate FEMA work getting done that was not supervised, and all the beds were killed by 8 inches of tree bark mulch being laid out on them, which I hadn't been consulted with, but unfortunately sort of devastated our morale. But my husband in 2013 went in to the building and did a survey.
I'm going to ask you to wrap up.
And I want to give you that report and the letter that he wrote to Ed Day for your review.
Thank you.
And this is we went through room by room of the house and judged what needed work, what needed electrical, what kinds of things needed to be done. Anyway, I'm still in Pomona, up the street, and I would love to be part of any action aside from, I'm sorry, Habitat for Humanity, not low-income housing. But thank you for listening.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Excuse us, we have a meeting.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for coming.
By the way, I examined the Burgess Meredith house on Friday, interior and exterior, so if the board wants recent commentary, I'm happy to.
I think we'd like that. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, Bob Asselbergs from Chestnut Ridge. I don't have a statement, I only have a question. And that is, if the town decides to sell any of these or other properties, what would the sale process be? How would the town go about doing that?
I'll just tell you very briefly, what would happen if there is a decision by the town board to sell any property owned by the town board first has to vote to declare it surplus, which means that there's a finding that it's not needed for town purposes. And then usually a property, if there's going to be a sale, might be put out for request for bids. If a bid is accepted, or proposal is accepted, the town board would enter into a resolution to sell the property to a particular buyer. It's subject to what's called permissive referendum, which means that if a petition with a certain amount of signatures is filed, and I don't want to give specifics because I don't know them off the top of my head, I don't want to mislead, is filed within a certain amount of time, it would have to be then voted upon by ballot throughout the town. But if there's no petition filed with the required amount of signatures within that time period, then the sale goes forward. I'm not sure who was
Okay,
next. Are you, give a follow-up, or?
So if you decide to sell a property, do you list it publicly? Is it marketed by a broker? Are the bids submitted in a
Well,
sealed bid or anything like
For
that?
real estate, legally, the town does not have to list it in any way or put it out for a bid. We probably would if we were to sell anything, which is not even, we're not even near that stage of making a decision like that. But generally, that's how something would be done if we sold anything from the town. But if for land, it's not required. We are required, though, to make sure that we get a fair market value if we sell it. So we have to have a recent appraisal, and the sale price has to be in that range. Yes, right over here, ma'am.
I just had a follow-up to that question. If the process of sale is by bidding, does the land come already with zoning? Or do the people buy it and then they have to go, then they can go and get it rezoned however they want?
Whoever, if land, and we're talking strictly hypothetical, if land is purchased by anybody, it's subject to whatever the zoning laws are of whatever jurisdiction it's in. Some of these properties are not in the unincorporated town, they're in a village. But either way, whoever buys the land would have to go through the normal application procedures like everybody else. It's not sold with any guarantee that anything could be built on it.
Well, from looking at what was given out, it doesn't look like anything has any particular zoning on it. So if you would sell it, could somebody then come in and say, well, now that we own it, we want to put whatever we want to put on it and then get it zoned for that?
Well, they'd have no
And
right-
nobody would have any say about that?
No, whatever you're looking at there should be a zone for most of the properties. If there's not, it's because it's one of the ones in the village, and we just didn't put that information in. But it's subject to whatever zone that it currently is. I mean, looking at the hamlets, if you look at the bottom, it says R40, which is the R40 zone. You need 40,000 square foot lots to build a single-family home. If you look at the quarry, well, we didn't list it, but I know that's in the Suffern, it's in the, I believe, the light industrial zone. The Cultural Arts Center is in the village of Spring Valley. The Pine Brook is in the village of Chestnut Ridge. It's subject to whatever the zoning is, which is always subject to change by those villages. But there's no exemption from the zoning laws just because they bought the property from any particular municipality.
Property is a public park right now, isn't it? Am I correct?
It's not a park. It's
Parkland?
vacant land. It's not.
Doesn't say children's park on it?
Not the Pine Brook site, no. Yes, right here. Thank you.
My name is Mike Castelluccio from Chestnut Ridge. If you don't mind, I'd like to sit down because I have a number of papers just to flip.
Michael, can you put the mic up because we can't?
Okay. The papers that I just gave the board are a listing of 23 open space properties in Ramapo. This list was created by the town of Ramapo, was published and sent to every resident in the town of Ramapo in the spring of 2011. No, I'm sorry. It's 11 years ago, 2007. So more than a decade, that has been the official record of the town of Ramapo for open space. The problem right now with this list that we're considering tonight is that 3 out of 5 of the properties on the list considered tonight are on that list of open space properties. Tilcon Quarry, 40 Pine Brook Road, Ramapo Cultural Arts Center. That list was never contested, and in fact, when we objected to our request, I'm from Preserve Ramapo, when we requested that a formal dedication of the open space properties be done by the town, Michael Klein and Supervisor St. Lawrence insisted on several occasions and published in the newspaper a strong objection to our request for this because they said that the properties were, by declaration by the town, open space properties. We did some research, legal research on this. By the way, the current policy of the town of Ramapo for open space is this. This is on their website today. Ramapo is one of the visionary communities in the country that has come to the realization that the only effective method of preserving open space in perpetuity is through public ownership. It only works when public ownership is recognized as the force of law in this situation. The town of Ramapo does not own these properties, you do. You are the town of Ramapo. You make the decisions about this, and it's already been declared open space by previous administration. We did some legal research just to verify this. I went to the Department of State. They referred me to the project manager of the Trust for Public Land, and he directed us to an environmental attorney who gave this description of the 2 steps that are required for open space. These are quotes. This is not my writing. A dedication is generally defined, this dedication of the open space, is generally defined as the devotion of property to a public use by an unequivocal act of the owner. The owner is Ramapo, that's you. Manifesting an intention that it shall be accepted and used presently or in the future. The intention of the owner to dedicate and the acceptance thereof by the public are the essential elements of a complete dedication. Thus, it is vital to a dedication of property to public use that it is to be forever and irrevocable after acceptance, and that it be for public use. The declaration was in that document. The declaration was in a community view by Christopher St. Lawrence in the Journal News. The declaration was in this room, and Christopher St. Lawrence told me I should be very happy that he has dedicated Chestnut Ridge Road as one of those open spaces. There's ample record that the dedication has already been established. Now, the second half, the second quality here is that there has to be public acceptance. So you would think that there would have to be a vote. There doesn't have to be a vote. The designated use is defined this way. There are various ways in which acceptance by the public may be established. In addition to acceptance shown by express act, there may be an implied acceptance arising from acts of a municipality or its officers, and also from use by the public for the purpose for which the property was dedicated. Acceptance is found in the actions of a municipality or government unit, which is done on behalf of the public in making improvements to and maintaining the particular facility. In other words, the acceptance from the public from you may be proved by long public use or by the positive acts of the public authorities in recognizing and adopting the public space. This board, and no one since 2007, have objected to the use of those properties as open space. They cannot be sold.
Thank you. Yes, Antoinette.
Hi, my name is Antoinette Mariano. I live in Hilburn. One of the things I'd like to say is that Rockland County is in seriously bad need of senior citizen housing. Our senior citizens, a lot of them are low income to medium income, and we really need more housing here in Rockland County. So if anything's being done to open space or open land or selling, I would like to ask the board to consider something like that for our senior citizens here in Rockland County. The other thing I'd like to talk about is the quarry. I'm not speaking on behalf of Suffern, but Suffern has their village board meeting tonight. So there's a lot of going on there, and most of those people are there. Plus, Ramapo Central Schools District also has something going on tonight. But with the quarry, one of the things we talked about was recreational. Well, in Ireland, we were on a project with a quarry, and we opened it up for recreational scuba diving. And it turned out to be a very successful process with that quarry. And there's a lot of information on it online. The other thing I'd like to talk about is the Cultural Arts Center in Spring Valley. As everybody knows me, I am one of the people that work with Ramapo Central School District, Suffern School District, and Clifford Theater, Antrim Theater. I do all their costumes for their cultural arts shows. I have done them in the past. One of the things I have done was Ramapo Central School District, or Ramapo High School. I just did the fame with them. And I made their costumes. They had so much, no budget, zero. And those children need space to store things, to do cultural arts with. Their theater in the school needs work. So, you know, maybe we can help them out by using the Cultural Arts Center in Spring Valley and using that space for storage for some of the items that we can share among all the school districts here in Ramapo Central Schools. We have a lot of stage things that we need storage for, and we have a lot of costumes that we need storage for, and things that we can share among each other's schools and work together as a team to make it successful for our children here in Rockland County. That's all.
Thank you. Yes, right over here, please.
I'd like to just echo
I'm sorry, could you just give your name?
Terry Thal, T-H-A-L.
Thank you.
I'm with West Branch Conservation Association. I'd like to echo Deb Munitz's question of why we're here. Here are some pieces of paper, here are some properties, here are some descriptions of the properties. So, are these properties that you're considering selling? Are these properties that we have been asked to come and defend? What does Ramapo plan to do with them that requires it, or not requires it, but that resulted in your inviting a host of people to come and talk about these properties? I really don't get it. I would like to add, incidentally, that I'm really interested in hearing your interest in having partnering organizations. Martis Granera, who was president of West Branch Conservation and worked for the town of Ramapo, got Chris St. Lawrence to buy Crow House. I wrote the grant proposal that brought Ramapo $497,000 to buy the property. And we were not allowed to sit on any of the committees that had anything to do with the property. So I would again like to offer a quote partnership unquote if such a thing exists now. And if I sound a little snide, I'm sorry, but I really would like to know why we're here. What is Ramapo proposing or thinking of that requires public input?
Okay, I could address that very briefly. Nothing is being proposed for any of these properties. Nothing is being proposed for any of these properties at this time. We wanted public participation, public input to guide us as we go forward. We looked at, or are looking at, all of the properties owned by the town. Over the years, the town acquired a number of properties, and unfortunately has not always done the best with each property. And we need to decide what to do with each one. Each one's a separate case as we go forward. And I thought more public involvement rather than less would be beneficial. So I decided to have this committee meet and to have a public meeting and possibly multiple public meetings to listen to what you had to say about it. That's exactly why we're here. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Avi Maor. I live in 20 Dogwood Lane in Pomona. I don't want to address any of these 5 properties in particular, but I understand that you're looking eventually to deal with more properties that you own. The fact is that there's great pressure on you to develop more housing in the county, and in particular in this particular town. So I see here right now a lack of any kind of standards to evaluate any property. And I suggest, instead of looking at each particular property right now, is to try to develop some criteria to evaluate those properties, okay? Sort of a yardstick by which you'll have to see which one of them, what to do with it. And I suggest that since you have basically 3 types of land, the first type is of totally undeveloped natural areas. The other is somewhat developed or developed in the past or underdeveloped, but they have been already disturbed. And then you have some parcels, you can see it right here, they were fully developed or utilized. And I suggest that the first yardstick should be that no natural area that have not been developed should be developed. That should be the first criteria, to keep the undeveloped natural areas in the county and in the town undeveloped. All the other ones, whether partially or in the past, could be considered for this kind of evaluation, but this should be done only after you decide which one of them are going to be looked at.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Margaret Alvarez. I live and work in the unincorporated part of Pomona, and I received a notice about development of the Stryker property. I see that's not on our agenda today, but I would like to know when it would be and how we can respond.
Well, just very briefly, at this point, there's nothing planned with the Stryker property. It's in the, it's a large, as you know, it's a very large parcel within the northeast region of the town that currently we're having our Northeast Strategic Land Use Plan look at. So I think any change in the status quo of the Stryker property will only take place through that process. I don't think it would be appropriate to consider that separately due to the size and the impact of that property.
Okay, and we've been notified of that?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think there was a lady over here that had her hand up.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Julia Thompson, and I'm the Executive Director for Liberty Learning Tree, Dignity Services, Inc. And we have been around since the late 90s, and under our umbrella is the working with reentry and also with working with developmentally disabled people. So I had been in and spoken with the supervisor, and I'm very happy to hear tonight about the Culture Arts Center in Spring Valley. That's where our agency is located. And we are looking for space. As was stated earlier, not-for-profits have a very difficult time renting space. It's extravagant, the prices that we have to pay, and it's very difficult to maintain space. So I'm very, very happy to hear tonight that you are talking about the Culture Arts Center in Spring Valley, and certainly we would be more than happy if you would partner with us. We're looking for space and to do a program that will help with mentoring, to do an apprenticeship, training, teaching, education, providing child care, and those type of things to help those people who are reentering and also for the developmentally disabled population. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Susan Shapiro, and I have a couple of questions. You just mentioned that the Stryker property was not being considered because of the northeastern, what are you calling? Strategic planning. But then why is the Burgess Meredith property being considered? Isn't that in the same area? It should be considered in the same area. It certainly is in the northeastern portion of the town of Ramapo.
It's basically 1/10 the size. It's 7 acres rather than 75 acres.
The other thing that I'd like to bring to your attention is, as was mentioned previously, that these properties, all of the properties, were dedicated by implication and by the public monies that were used as open space for the town of Ramapo. And so if you are planning to sell any of them, you have to go through a process. You have to go through alienation. You have to get approval from the state board, from both the Senate and the House, and the Assembly. And then you have to find comparable properties to replace them with. You can't just sell off the public lands without getting new public lands to fulfill that. So I think you have to be very aware of that and be very cautious of that. Because literally what's happening in this town is that the open spaces that should have been put aside in subdivisions, instead the town repeatedly has allowed money in lieu of lands. And so there's less open space than there should have been. And so these open spaces that you currently have aren't really enough, but they're there. And so if you start getting rid of them, you're going to have less and less, and you're not providing for the community. The community needs an area to recreate and to have open space, and people have moved to this area because they don't want to live in a city. They want to live in an area where there's green trees and open space. So I agree with what other people have said here, that any properties that are undeveloped should not be, sold off for development. And I'd like you to make available to all of us the resolutions that approve the purchase of these properties. I'd like to see the contracts that were, that purchased the open space, and to see where the funding came from to purchase this open space. Some of them, I understand, at least one was $1, but the others was quite a bit of money. So where did that money come from, and what ties that money had? There's a concern in the town. We understand that there may be a financial concern, as Bruce raised earlier, but we haven't really seen what is the financial concern. And before you start selling off the lands, I think everybody in the town would like to know what is actually the deficit in the town. Let's see the audit. Let's see the accounting. I think that it's time for that to be made available to the public. When will that be available?
We'd like to see it too. We're waiting from our auditors. We spoke with them.
Today.
Today you spoke. I know we spoke Friday. You spoke again today. And we're told,
So in terms of and I really don't want to
Right,
go
get off track.
topic,
Right.
and I really do want to respond to one of the questions you did. We requested that they have it in within the next 14 days. Whether they will or not, I don't know. I will tell you that the new audit team that we've brought on, the current auditors were supposed to do the next year. The town board made a decision that they were not going to be able to do it in a timely fashion since they did not do the current one.
215.
You can understand their hesitation in wanting to be sure that whatever they produce is, for lack of a better term, bulletproof. So I can understand they're wanting to get a peer review, which I understand they've done, and other such things. I did meet with the auditors this morning that were here with a team of about 6 people.
6 people.
And when I
The
gave...
new auditors.
The new auditors. When I gave a timeline at the last board meeting where I felt that we would be able to do, I believe it was May for the 16 audit, August for the 17 audit, and by September, October for the 18 audit, and I'm guessing that I said, I don't remember exactly, the chief auditor specifically said to me today, that's being very conservative. He's hoping to have it done before that. So that's the answer to that question. We will continue to push the current auditors to get the document out. We don't have a draft of it. We don't have any of it. Otherwise, we would, and the supervisor has committed to make all of that available, which will bring me to the next point. I think everybody on this committee will agree that over the course of the next 2 weeks, we will put on our website under a title called TARC Committee as much information as we can gather on each property that we have. It'll include a cover of which bond it was bought with. It'll include, if we're allowed to do it, I have to ask the attorney, the documentation. I don't see any reason why it couldn't be the deed. Whatever we have that we could possibly put up that's useful, we will commit, anybody have an objection to that?
No.
To posting on our website within the next 14 to 21 days.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And before any decisions are made, that would,
This
obviously,
committee-
you need it as well as we do.
No decisions will be made on anything in that in the near future, to be honest.
I just want to refer back to your comment. One of the reasons we're here tonight is to build relationships and partnerships with the public that has previously been heard, not been heard. We want to hear what you have to say. Just tonight alone, we've learned of 3 organizations that are willing to help us. You know, somebody said they write grants. Well, come sit down with us, be our guest, we'll work together. As I mentioned, Harmony Hall told us they needed a lease from us in order for them to apply for a grant. So we're looking to figure out how to work together in a better way to preserve what needs to be preserved, develop some housing like the gentleman said somewhere, if necessary, to continue to build parks. We have 4 or 5 new parks, which we're just thinking about doing. Michelle and I have met 4 or 5 times. So we heard what you said about money in lieu and that it should be used to develop parks. And that is, I believe, the intent of the current town board, and certainly the will of this committee is to try to do the best we can to start healing and help everybody work together.
I'd like to make one other suggestion. It's come to my attention that there's many properties that are on tax exempt roll in the town that are not actually being used for tax exempt purposes. If the town does a full audit of their tax exempt properties to see if they're actually being used for tax exempt purposes, a tax exempt corporation cannot own property that's not being currently used for that purpose. And you could get quite a bit of money back into the town by taking those off the tax exempt roll. And I really suggest that.
It's a little bit off topic, but I will say that our assessor actively audits every property and looks to make sure that if there's a property that shouldn't be exempt, they're not exempt.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, my name's Matthew Piccolo. I live in
I'm sorry,
Suffern.
people are talking. Can you?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for supporting our wonderful tennis facility.
We saw the racket back there. Where's the lady with the racket?
Oh,
good.
Get those rackets up. We don't want to be hit with them.
Yeah, unless you play tennis, you may not be aware of what a valuable asset we have. We have 8 soft courts, which are just unique. I talk to friends of mine who live in New Jersey, and I tell them we have these fabulous courts, you know, how terrific they are. And then there are 4 hard courts. And I've been playing for years and years and made so many friends. And these courts are particularly good for people of I'm 76, and we have people in their 60s, 70s, 80s. Simon? Stand up. How old are you, Simon?
89. Wow.
And he plays.
You look great.
You know, there's a bunch of us here who just want to encourage this this asset that's just tremendous. And Mike, do you want to say something?
Yeah, my name is Mike Rutter. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor and Town Board for entertaining open comments tonight. Appreciate it. The spirit of openness, it feels really good in here. You're really listening to folks, and it feels good. Yeah, I've been playing Ramapo tennis for over a decade. I don't live in the town of Ramapo, but my children do, and they live in the village of Sloatsburg. And to live in a 1-bathroom house, they're paying $12,000 in taxes. Those of you who live up here know this is completely possible. They pay a village tax, a town tax, and a county tax. And they moved here because of the exceptional recreational facilities that are available in the town of Ramapo and educational opportunities as well. Ramapo Tennis is one of those places. Seated here is a whole, could you all stand up, everybody, all the people who play at Ramapo, so you just get an idea how many people this is. Rustic, it's rustic tennis. How many people this is. Tennis, by the way, and we can say that by Simon, there has been a great deal of research done that for some reason doubles tennis, and they don't know why, helps people live a lot longer. People who play, the large number study found that people who play tennis live an average of 7 years longer. Doubles tennis, and part of it is the tennis, and part of it is the social aspect of having seniors not being isolated, being able to make connections outside. But then Ramapo also services children. That rustic tennis has a large tennis camp, which services the youth around. And that's my grandson that I'm thinking about, who I hope will play there one day. And as Matt indicated, these courts are very precious. They're the only public clay courts in Rockland County. If this were to close, most of the folks who play there could not afford to play on clay courts, and their tennis careers would pretty much come in because we can't play on concrete anymore. We just can't. Orthopedically, we can't. So, and if you fall on concrete, you don't get up. So, at least we don't. We don't get up anyway. But I'd just like to thank the board for considering that, and I would hope that they would look to preserve this incredible facility, and it's really quite valuable for us, and I think for the town of Ramapo. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So if we could just address the reason why Rustic is not on that list is that this, first of all, this committee is not the town board. The town board has convened and discussed with individual town board members, the supervisor. Rustic is staying open. The town budget included revenue in there, but not expenses, as we're well aware of that. But we've met with Michelle, who I'd like to give kudos to, because we do have the best Parks and Recreation Department in the county. And we're looking to increase what we do for our residents in a variety of different places. But we're coming up with a new structure over there, which is only going to help enhance the opportunities and offset the expenses that we would have had otherwise. So we wanted you to know directly that the town board has made the decision to continue to operate Rustic. It just might be with a different flair, that's all. But you'll get exactly what you're used to.
My name is Jeanette Cuno, and I moved up here in 1984 from Long Island to raise my family. I lived in Airmont from 1984 to 2005, and now I reside in Montebello since that time. And one of the wonderful things we have are the Manny Welder Park in Viola, Camp Scuffy, Rustic Brook, Clark Park. And over the years, I've seen a lot of them deteriorate and not be used to the potential that they were in the past. And we have a great school district. When I moved here, I paid $3,000 a year for all my taxes inclusive in 1984, and now I pay $30,000 a year in taxes. And what little we have is to be able to use these open spaces and recreational facilities. So I thank you for keeping it open and for keeping Saddle River Pool, I hope, open.
Yes, we commit to that.
And all our other open spaces.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The other thing that the town board is committed to is that any money in lieu of land that's supposed to be used for parks and recreation purposes will now and in the future solely be used for parks and recreation purposes.
The goal is to expand, not detract from our recreational facilities. They're our pride and joy, and we want to not only keep them open, but whatever we can do to enhance them, we're going to do. Anybody else wish to speak? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Zev Oster. I'm a local beekeeper here in Rockland County. I purchased a property a couple years back in Montebello, and when I put my 2 beehives on the property and planted some blueberry plants, I got violations. I was dragged through court. I then reached out to the Rockland County for space to put my bees, and I was really welcomed with open hands, and I currently am part of the open space program in Rockland County. I'm working together with the county on pollination, and thank God I was able to move, and we have about 40 hives on one of the open space programs here in Rockland County. So congratulations, I thank you for reaching out and being very supportive of my efforts. I'm not here to go either way, I'm just here currently to say thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Levine. Oh, we'll let the gentleman in the back go. Thank you.
My name is Bill Hockhausen. I live in Pomona. I've been in Rockland County for more than 30 years and very happy to be here. I'd like to thank the board, and I'd like to thank everybody for coming out. It really feels great to participate in this conversation. I have a question for the board. We've heard so many individuals representing groups and themselves dealing with particular issues. The environment, of course, is very important nowadays, and especially going into the future. I have a question for the board. Is there a comprehensive environmental plan or study, or is there a larger look at the future of the environment in Rockland County rather than the individual piecemeal attention that we've been hearing about? Thank you.
Okay. Well,
He asked about the county.
yeah, you asked about the county or about the town specifically? Very good. We started looking at the Northeast region in terms of land use. We're going to expand that into looking at the entire town, starting in the next few months, actually. It's not specifically just an environmental review, it's a land use review, but obviously among the factors that are looked at are environmental factors, traffic, current land use, future land use, projected changes, projected areas to preserve as well. So that would be the answer.
Water, land, air, traffic, etc.
That's all part of the the general environmental impact statement that will be performed by our planning consultants. Thank you. It's a good question. Yes, ma'am.
To follow up on the Burgess Meredith property. Oh, sure, Suzanne Kernan, Pomona. That may be 7 acres, but the property, if you go along Leyden Town Road towards the Stop and Shop, parallel to 202, the property that abuts the Burgess Meredith property is Country Leaf Farm. It sold a while back. That's a large property. It's right next to it. And then now the next property next to that, the storage facility in Stop Realty, sold in November. That's another large property. You put those 3 together, you're talking a very large property that needs to be considered within the comprehensive plan, I would suggest.
Very good. Thank you. I just want to see if anyone else hasn't spoken yet. Let them go first, and we'll go back to repeat comments. Anybody else who hasn't spoken wish to speak at this time? Right here.
Hi, my name is Claire Sheridan, and I appreciate the transparency that the town is trying to get through this. I just would like to echo what Mr. Castelluccio said, Ms. Shapiro, Ms. Munitz. In addition to posting the cases, the resolution numbers, and all of that on your website, it's very important to make sure that what's included there is how the town acquired, what funding was used to acquire. So, not just the bonding, but also if there were grants from the state, for example. Because as was noted, to divest yourself of these properties, in some cases, takes resolutions from the state legislature. So that would take a tremendous amount of time, and you do need the replacement properties. So it makes sense, it would seem to make sense to try to make the most of these properties that are already designated as open space, rather than try to divest yourself for a very small, assistance. And of course, to reiterate what Ms. Shapiro said, to know exactly what is the fiscal situation. Without knowing that, it's very hard for the community to support what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lynch, there should be no problem putting that out, right? We have that information.
Not
We
at
can
all.
make
We
it
have
available.
complete information as to the financing of any property that we own, including any grants
We'll
that
put
would have
that all
been
out
put
there.
in place.
I'll also say, too, that if people, after tonight's meeting, at any time want to email or mail in written comments, that's fine, too. Certainly, we welcome any suggestions. If people want to wait and see what's posted and respond to that, that's fine also. There's no deadline at this point. Nothing imminent is planned. Anybody else wish to speak that
Yes.
hasn't spoken? Yes.
I already have a mic.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I'm happy to give it to you next. Yeah, I'd just like to say that I think it's really important. Yeah, Carol Bowman, I live in Pomona. To understand that many of the people here have come to support the open land and have come to support the use of that open land by all citizens. And that is one of the, not to be sold off for use by only specific groups of citizens, as private land may be. So what we do when we take public wealth, and we sell it to other people who then make it private wealth, is that you have taken from us our environmental basis for a healthy life. All people need green spaces. All people don't need the specific private uses to which these lands will be put. And in fact, those uses are completely go against what is healthy and supportive for the rest of the population. I don't know if you've heard about the study that about how green spaces help children in terms of their emotional stability and balance. But we as humans need these green spaces, and not only the people in this room, but all of the people who live in our town need those spaces. And they will be open to everyone, right? They don't need development necessarily. They just need to be maintained as they are. So, thank you.
We'll go back to Mr. Levine. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Paul Nagan. I'm the president of the Skyview Acres Land Trust. I just have a question. You have a green council, don't you?
Well, it was originally the Eleanor Burlingham Committee on Environmental Review, if I recall correctly, and how was that? And I just asked Janice Gittleman if we still had that committee. I'm not sure that it's fully formed, but certainly anybody who wishes to submit a review, submit a resume to the supervisor's office,
Sure.
we will certainly try to form a committee that'll meet once a month or once every other month.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned, I was on the committee when St. Lawrence founded it a long time ago.
Actually, Herb Reisman found it, probably.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Marty
All right.
Barron before that.
So maybe St. Lawrence continued it. But I was on it, we went to all the properties that you're talking about and evaluated them. So I was just assuming that they would have some input for you. You know, it would be interesting.
That was a good,
Good idea.
Good idea.
Yes, sir.
I'm Avi Maor. I understand that this master plan, so to speak, is still in progress, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
It
you.
had not been adopted. It's still in study and in progress.
What is? I didn't hear
The
you.
plan that we're discussing now.
Oh, correct, that's right.
Yes, okay. I would like to ask you if you would consider the possibility of forming an advisory board or advisory committee from all the people here that are really having an interest to have an input in work, not only one time, but also to help in developing it to fruition and having continuous input.
But we actually have a steering committee for the Northeast Plan. Actually, Mr. Nagan, who just spoke, is one of the members of that committee. And we have about 15 people on it from the public. As we go into other parts of the town for plans, we'll have more committees formed. But we do have.
So that committee is still willing to have more participants?
You're talking about for the sale of properties, or?
Oh, we're talking about two different
Talking
things.
about the development of these properties.
Oh.
Yeah.
For sale or otherwise.
I'm sorry.
We just mentioned that we're going to put together a committee of the public.
An environmental
an
committee.
environmental
I was referring to our strategic plan committee, that we do have an advisory committee.
Correct,
for the
correct,
plan.
to the people that are doing the planning.
Right, that there is a citizens committee.
Okay.
Thank you.
I
I know. I'm going to go back to Mr. Levine, who's been waiting patiently up front. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Oh, I misunderstood, I think you meant.
Hi,
Please.
my name is Armando Gomez.
I'm sorry?
Armando Gomez.
Thank you.
I rent stalls at the Equestrian Center, and I want to know if it's true the rumor that the Equestrian Center is going to be closed.
No, there's no plans to close the equestrian center. Right now, we have a license agreement with a particular occupant of it. What happens in the future, we don't know with in that particular business going forward, but there's no plans to do anything with the site.
Okay, thanks.
I don't want to take a lot of time. Just 2 points. One has to do with the quarry. Just so you're aware, the water company actually never rejected it as undoable. They rejected it because it wasn't going to produce the 7.5 MGD that they wanted. They actually say in their DEIS that they could produce 2.2 or something like that. So that's just something you should be aware of. And the second thing about that parcel is that when we were looking at the Amazon property, that was potentially included if there was a need for it. So before you, when you decide and look at that property, you need to look at those two properties together, at least a little bit, because they are right there and they could have, they could affect each other. Let me just finish the other point, because I know it's getting late. Going back to Spring Valley, and we talked about the community center and cultural arts center. But I do want you to be aware that of a plan that it never went anywhere because changes in office. But the Village of Spring Valley bought the parcel that's directly in front of Village Hall, what's colloquially called the ditch, right? And the plan for that was that over time, we would get, the village would be able to get grants to create an indoor recreational facility, which there is none. And I'm not talking about like for arts and those kinds of things, but I'm talking about actually one of the plans was for tennis courts, indoor tennis courts for the children of the Village of Spring Valley to use. And because architecturally it is a doable thing, but it obviously would take a lot of money and over time to do that. The reason why I'm raising this is because partnerships between the town and its villages can be extraordinarily helpful in providing for everyone in the town. And if the town were interested in this particular idea, I can certainly bring you up to speed to where we were up to. But it seems to me that the Village of Spring Valley, but other villages as well, might want to partner with the town on certain kinds of ideas. Everything from preserving open space that's not preserved now to building full-scale indoor recreational facilities for dances and tennis and those kinds of things that couldn't necessarily be done in the Cultural Arts Center.
Thank you. We're always welcome to discuss partnership with any of our villages, whatever we can do to consolidate or services, share services. We're always open to that. We've been trying to do that as much as possible.
And I think we should go further to say that the town of Ramapo has been in discussion with Mr. Michael Miller and Coupon, and that we understand that there's a need in the Hillcrest area for additional indoor recreation facilities. We might have had a single missed opportunity, which I'm hoping we can bring back before the board, but it is the intent of the town to attempt to create additional recreation facilities where needed. I would like to share that we actually worked with the Village of Suffern already. We gave them our clock. I know they haven't fixed it yet or changed the name on it, but we are trying to work cooperatively with the villages to try to, wherever we possibly can, work together.
And if there's room with the quarry to do something that benefits the village and the town in any way, that's something we're open to as well. Sure.
Yeah, I wanted to just add a little bit about the Burgess Meredith place, because I didn't speak to the house. The house really has a lot of charm and culture. My Fair Lady was written there, and Burgess used it as a guest house. It also has some very fascinating murals of Washington and Rochambeau overlooking the Hudson that we talked to Bill Krattinger about this. Were they ancient? No. They were probably painted by a friend, scenic artist of Burgess Meredith's. But the house itself has some really dynamic features. And although it's been neglected, we do feel strongly that the purposing of that property should feature the restoration of the building. The Varnampour tiles, which were around the pool, are somewhere in the town lockers. They were removed and stored somewhere. So we would love to know if they exist still, that they should be part of the property again and part of the Poor legacy. So there's a lot of story there that I think that we would all benefit from hearing again, and hope that everybody will come out in support of restoring this property and not just developing it for housing. Thank you.
Thank you. There's Michelle.
This will be really short because we all want to go home. I do want to thank you for having this. I've been encouraging various people. Yeah. Oh. Trying to encourage meetings like this, and particularly when people can ask questions and actually get answers. I think that's the best aspect, and I appreciate you turning around and kind of going with that, because I really think that's going to make a difference to your administration. With that in mind, and keeping in mind the comp plan and other things, I do want to just raise this for your consideration. I've often asked in the past for meetings like this, possibly on a monthly basis for different topics, and one of the key things, a couple key topics that I think are really important that relate specifically to this and the comprehensive plan that's going on is, and I think the concern was sort of raised, is the need to look at things comprehensively. And we are racing ahead looking at these different areas, and one of the biggest issues I know I've raised has been we haven't started with the problems that we've all encountered, you know, since the last comprehensive plan with the laws that have been passed. And I think that, I mean, nobody wants to go to a bitch session, but I think it's really, really important to see what people's thought processes are with respect to problems. And I know you guys have inherited a lot of situations and you're trying to fix it, but one of the things that particularly irked me last year was the whole situation that came up in Sloatsburg with the development up there, where you had a situation where there was no money in lieu of land, there was no public parkland, there was no set aside, and yet the town inherited yet another property that requires maintenance. And that is a problem where St. Lawrence had gone and purchased, you know, with all good intention, the Crow House, the Burgess Meredith property, a lot of properties that require vision and require maintenance, and people are disappointed that we don't have that. And I think we need to start, before we even start throwing ideas, we're going to have a meeting on the 23rd. You haven't mentioned it to anybody, but everybody should be back here. Actually, Pomona Middle School on the 23rd to hear what the planners. But I think it's really important before we task the planners with visions is we have to think about the problems. And that's something that I've raised before, is that there have been purchases that have been made with nice thought processes, but they've been overspent because it built on people's fears. The fears of who would move in, or that this use would change and whatever, and it's like, oh, you're going to save something, so you overpay. And yes, there were overpayments made on so many parklands here, and it's just where we are. And I think the question is, one of the things that you haven't raised today is, and I think it's really important, is what would it take to make each of these properties more usable? How can people take a walk in the woods on Stryker? How could people, this is an idea for how this could be made usable, before any consideration should be made with respect to getting rid of anything. I think the question is, you know, what is the vision that people have? And I think some of that has come up in this meeting, but I think we could do more, and I think we do need to examine things like our subdivision regulations with, you know, money in lieu of land and these things that are not enforced, and then you get stuck, and due to expediency and things like that, you know, you guys did a pass on over $1 million worth of money in lieu of land that you should have been getting from that Sloatsburg property that could be used to support the St. Lawrence Center in that area. And so I don't want you to be afraid of public participation. I don't want you to feel that, you know, everybody's coming to bitch and complain. And I know I raise a lot of issues myself, but it's always really, you need support from all sides to do things. And I think I would encourage everybody, you know, you need to speak up and help them make these decisions for everyone. And I think that having more meetings like this and particularly, I know it sounds hard, but opening up the can of worms for what's bothering you about what has happened since the last comp plan so that we don't keep making these problems in the future.
So we intend for that to happen, and the planners are working on developing a strategy in order to be able to do just that, and they may be smaller in internal meetings, and if the supervisor doesn't mind, in light of the fact that on the 23rd at Pomona, there is going to be the next step in that process, and although I know people dislike when we change meetings, the town board is going to reschedule the town board meeting that night so that people don't feel conflicted that they want to be at the planning meeting and the town board meeting. So we're going to reschedule, I believe, for
Probably
the
the following
following
Wednesday,
Wednesday.
the 30th.
So forgive us, it's the beginning of the year, and we are making a change in our meeting schedule, but that's so that we can attempt to accommodate everybody to be where they want to be, to have input into this process.
Does anybody else wish to speak? If not, I'll just wrap it up very quickly. I'd like to say thank you to all of you who came out tonight. We were truly appreciated. We had a great crowd. I think we had a great conversation. This is just the beginning. And I'm very happy to see everybody here. I think there were a lot of good suggestions, good comments from the audience. We may not all agree on every issue at every time, but the fact that we had this meeting and all spoke together in a very productive way, I think speaks well of our town, and I think it's something we could all be proud of. So thank you all for coming out.